Merry Christmas. That's right, Christmas yappings. This is not alcohol. I thought it was cider. I have no idea what it is. I looked it up, it's not alcoholic, and it tastes horrible. I drank 2 whole bottles of it already. It does not taste good, but there's nothing else to drink. Technically, I can drink the water, but I'm too lazy to do that. So today, guess what? We're talking about rockets. Who knew? So rockets are rockets. Rockets are cool. And, what else have I not done? Yeah, refrigerators are rockets. Well, not really. China's space program is really nice. Yeah, I know I'm Chinese, but the Chinese space program is the only thing I like about them. Everything else I hate. Because, it gets quite personal. And, one thing I like about the Chinese space program is the fact that they're able to make so many expendable rockets. Obviously, they don't have a high percentage of the national budget, so they've got to be making it cheaper somehow. And they do, by making crap rockets. What they do is they take refrigerator factories and they repurpose them to become rocket factories, rocket engine factories. Now you might ask, why would you do that? Well, if you think about it, refrigerators and rocket engines, at least the nozzles, are not very different. Rocket engines, now refrigerators have something inside of them you need to cool. So, in order to cool them, you run a cold liquid through the walls of the refrigerator to cool it down. And that's exactly the same thing as what a rocket engine does. It's thousands of degrees on the inside. You gotta cool that down, or else it's gonna melt. There's 2 ways to cool it down. One is to use ablative shielding, similar to the ablative heat shields that were used on crew capsules, and also spy satellites for early spy satellites that use tape recorders and stuff. To basically cool it down. It would bring heat off, but it's not very reusable, and also it's not the most efficient. So the second option is to cool it using the fuel. So you pump the fuel through to cool it. That sounds exactly like a refrigerator. That's why the Chinese make their rocket engines in refrigerator factories. No, I don't know that because I used to work at it. Because I've never been to China. And I won't go. I'm sorry. Russia used to do the same thing, but nowadays they kind of do it, but, it's really old. They just don't fix their facilities, that's it. Their facilities are from the 1980s. They just won't fix it. They don't have the money to fix it. Vodka. Good Russian. It tastes disgusting. I like it. So yeah, rocket engines are refrigerators. Let's see, what else can I say? Yeah. So there's a weird thing when it comes to fuel tanks. I only learned this like a couple days ago by reading Rocket Propulsion Elements in their part about tanks. So, it's very interesting. For cryogenic fuels, cryogenic means you need to cool it down. Like a lot by a lot. So we are talking liquid oxygen, and liquid hydrogen or liquid methane. Okay, liquid oxygen is the oxidizer, liquid methane or liquid hydrogen or whatever you want could be the fuel. And they're much better fuels than things like kerosene or for oxidizers, hydrogen peroxide, and usually the good storable oxidizers are like horrifically acidic chemicals that you probably don't want to touch with a 1,000-foot pole. So, no, that's out of the question. Unless you're Otrag. So in order to cool it, when you put it on the launch pad, obviously it has a temperature. So if you pump it full now, some of it's going to boil off, and that can lead to further problems, like center of gravity change, or sloshing, depending on how good your baffles are. I'll get into that later. So in order to stop it from evaporating, you need to cool down the tanks first. And they figured out that the best way is to pump a little bit of cryogenic fuel into the tanks. So it cools it down just enough, it goes through, evaporates, and then you can put all of it in. Oh, and also, apparently the best way to cool a cryogenic tank is by putting it in a vacuum chamber. That way, heat can't evaporate. There's no heat coming in, nothing can get out. But that's expensive and heavy. So most people just use foam. Foam is a good thermal insulator. Something I learned while trying to look that up on the internet is that, the Nazis had the V2 rocket. And if you look at the V2 rocket, you don't see, in modern rocket launchers, you see all the clouds coming around it. That's evaporated cryogenic fuel. So you might think that the V2, because you don't see that on the V2 when it launches. So that must mean that the V2 doesn't use cryogenic fuels. But if you look it up, it does use cryogenic fuels. Think it uses liquid oxygen? You know what that means? You know what that means? There's gotta be some thermal insulation. Wow. You kept us waiting for 5 seconds for you to say thermal insulation. So if you look at the old U.S. Army films, because we stole their rockets and also their engineers, if you look at the film, you can see them packing it full of cotton. Why did they pack it full of cotton? I don't know. But it acts as a good thermal insulation to stop the weird cloud puffy things from the outside. I still don't know why they added that. It just seems like of no use to me. Maybe it's just extra thermal insulation for our tanks. Whatever, who cares? Ow. Russian Cosmism. So if you don't know, Russian Cosmism is a sect of Eastern Orthodox Christianity. And it's really weird, but I also really like it. In fact, I subscribe to it, most of it. It's the idea that Jesus died so that we could go to space, prolong life, and basically be Christian transhumanists. No, I'm not transgender, I said transhumanists. That means the belief that using science and technology, we can grow out of being just regular biological beings into greater beings. On Rational Wiki, they have a quote, and it basically says that in order to stop God from existing, we need to kill as many transhumanists as possible, just in case one of them puts so many medications into their body that they become God. Stupid Rational Wiki. I'm not 13, I'm 12. So I can't read you. I swear, everyone who's on Rational Wiki is just 12 years old. No, 13 years old. I'm being naughty. Oh, disgusting. How? We got 10 minutes left. So, Russian Cosmism was started by Nikolai Fyodorov, also known as the Socrates of Moscow. He had a lot of stuff to say, and believe it or not, he worked at a library. He was a librarian, and there was one student that he would often help. He'd helped him a lot. They eventually became good friends, and Fyodorov introduced him to this kind of philosophy of cosmism. That man, who he was friends with, was a young Tsiolkovsky, Konstantin Tsiolkovsky. He is the reason why we go to space. He figured out all the rockets, the equations, and stuff. He figured out the most efficient fuel would be liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen. Fyodorov was important. Early Soviet space program was basically a gigantic Russian cosmism movement. Who needs a cork when you have an edible cork? Cork, not cork. So, yeah, Russian cosmism is important. If you watch Soyuz launching, when you watch Soyuz launching, the Soyuz rocket and the Soyuz capsule, just letting you know that that's because of Fyodorov. That right there, you're watching Russian cosmism lifting off. Yeah, Russian cosmism is almost dead at this point. There's a couple people who still believe in it, but not many, and barely anyone knows about it here in the West. So that's sad. I think that's a really nice idea. Nikolai Fyodorov had a critique of Buddhism. Yeah, he criticized Buddhism. He said that Buddhism was evil because Buddhism does not say murder is bad. Buddhism does not have any opinions on whether stealing, murder, kidnapping, lying, it does not say any of it is bad. It says, for myself, I need to get personal enlightenment. So he really didn't like Buddhism because of that. And I agree with him. Because if you have a religion, you've got to at least have a moral code. Because you say that eating cows is bad. Okay? What about killing people? What about stealing stuff? What is bad? Buddhism does not answer that. Fyodorov said, well, guess what? Christianity answers that. And I agree with him on that. Fyodorov's nice. There's only like one video of him out there in the world, and he looks pretty nice. He looks really funny. I should not have. Happy holidays. Oh, God. My God. Anyways. Yeah, I like Russian Cosmism. So, the nice thing is that Robert Goddard. So I think I hope you're familiar with the 3 rocket pioneers of the 20th century. That is Konstantin Tsiolkovsky. He's the Russian guy. Konstantin Tsiolkovsky. Hermann Oberth. I think that's his name. I know it's Oberth, but I don't know if it's Hermann. He's a German guy. He's the mentor to Wernher von Braun. I'm making a video. You see, and then there was Robert Goddard, the American. I think the sad thing is that Robert Goddard's work was never built upon. Never. Sad. Germany and Russia was very open to the ideas of rocketry, but America was not. See, the New York Times published an article that was basically condemning Goddard for believing that a rocket would work in space. This was a response to the paper that said that you could use a rocket to go to the moon. And actually, the New York Times published an apology article after Apollo 11. Suck it, New York. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Could you stop talking? I'm trying to film. I'm trying to film. This makes it more casual. More like I'm having a conversation with them. Nothing happened. So, because of how hostile America was to rocket science, they were basically left behind. The early American space program had nothing to do with Goddard. They just stole Germans. Because they had bashed rocketry so much that they had no rocket scientists. Goddard was dead. Everyone thought rocketry was dumb. So naturally, the only thing he could do was to kidnap people. Oh, this is disgusting. So the Soviet rocketry program, I think I like it more because it's homegrown. The American rocketry program, you imported knowledge. I like Russian space program. It had nice rockets. I said in another video, one thing that Americans should learn from the Russians is, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Soyuz was never broken. They never fixed it. The R-7 is still launching to this day. The first rocket to ever reach orbit is still launching to this day. Slightly different configuration, slight modifications, but, it's really just the same thing. America Nah. You replaced the Atlas with the Titan, which was replaced by the Saturn 1B, which was replaced by the Shuttle, which was replaced by the Soyuz, which was replaced by the Falcon 9. It's just dumb. Although, I think at this point I'm obligated to mention the horrendous things that happened in the Soviet's rocket program, and I condemn them. When you're dealing with space exploration, rocketry, you need to be like the Americans. You need to be cautious. You can't just throw your astronauts out there and hope that they come back. I'm reminded of the first time Soyuz launched, the Soyuz capsule, with sole astronaut Vladimir Komarov. There's a rumor that Yuri Gagarin, the first man in space and Komarov's friend, saw what the mission was, saw the capsule, and he realized that it was not going to work. So he tried his best to get the mission canceled. He tried to delay it as much as possible. He asked them to give him a flight suit, like a full flight suit, so that he could go meet Komarov. He was trying to delay it as much as possible. But in the end, it didn't work. It launched, came down, guidance failed. According to some sources, Vladimir Komarov's last words were something along the lines of, "Not a damn thing that I put lay my hands on is working," followed by a series of short shouts and screams of rage before his capsule hit the ground. There's pictures of Komarov's body, and it's scary. Just a man fried to a crisp like that. Soviet rocket program sucked. One thing I wish they did was, while Komarov was coming down, and he realized that he was probably going to die because nothing was working, he shouted into the radio. He basically said, "I would like my funeral to be an open casket one." It was a closed casket one. The Soviets were not doing anything for science. The Soviets were not doing anything for exploration. They were doing it to beat the Americans. The Americans were doing it to beat the Soviets. This day... Well, actually, no. New era has started. ESA. ISRO. To some extent, CNSA. That's a Chinese one. They were not started in competition with each other. They were started in a need for their country to benefit from space access. And that's what I like. America did not want to benefit from space access. They wanted to beat the Soviets. Soviets did not want the benefits from space access. They wanted to beat the Americans. It's 25 minutes long. Merry Christmas. Screw off!